So this video, my hook is Ecosocialism. I was gonna do a different hook and then just come in to get a nice environment made me realize that, okay, one of the things I've been thinking about recently is creating order, and Vietnam has genuinely taken my breath away. Look at this backdrop, and I feel like whether they meant it, well, they didn't mean it intentionally, but this is an example of the eco-socialism that I've recently discovered that I think is the future. And why is it the future? Because it integrates nature and respect with people and planet. And we're in a time where climate change is obviously a pressing topic, whether people want to deny it or not. Not only that, culture clashes, a lack of understanding. People want to listen to stuff that reaffirms their own beliefs, and they're not open to new perspectives. Eco-socialism is a political structure. Now, I find politics very interesting, but for me, sovereignty comes from within your own attributes, your own beliefs, your own potential, your own hunger, rather than some puppet dictating what you can and can't do that you then adhere to. Like, obviously there is some value to it. You know, we're social, we live in nationalistic communities, but as I say, anyone has the ability to do well given the right circumstances, which just comes from wanting, choosing understanding your values, understanding your true values, and then putting yourself in them places to learn, and perspective, so seeing things as a lesson rather than a loss. I mention eco-socialism as a political structure, but really it's solar punk is the future. What solar punk is, it's not a windy one. What solar punk is, it's not a political structure, it's more a way of life, more about lifestyle rather than being governed and dictated by outside forces. Eco-socialism will be more like the stabilizers that keep it in place and stop it collapsing into authoritarianism. And solar punk is about, it blends innovation from Western Europe, for example, and of course North America, but it also is more conscious of conserving community and our place as a part of nature, which is obviously stronger in the East and even Eastern Europe, where they have more conservative communal values. Now, what does this mean in practice? It means transport should be ultra cheap, which here in Vietnam, for example, it is. I can get a Grab, which is similar to Uber, Grab bike, and it normally costs anywhere from 20,000 Vietnamese dollars to 100,000 Vietnamese dollars for my typical journeys, which have been 10 minutes to half an hour, which is nothing, genuinely nothing. It's 35,000 Vietnamese dollars, £1 and a pence currently. So we're talking nothing relative to income of Western European, most developed nations, right? Americans are thriving out here because their US dollar goes a long way. But I think what makes it so I think what makes it so such a brilliant place, I'm using Vietnam as it's the closest example to what people envision. Vietnam, they're an industrial people, very pragmatic, but they've maintained the friendly, welcoming spirit, even despite a history. I was watching a 4-hour YouTube video on history of Vietnam, and it's pretty crazy. They've had a lot of challenges. I know every nation has, but to have that many challenges and still be welcoming and open, hospitable to everyone is really impressive. They have a very good connection to one another. They're very sociable publicly, which again comes down to cheap places to eat, cheap activities to do, places to visit that are good for your well-being. There's Pilates studios, yoga classes, I don't know, water sports, surfing in different parts, like things that are just good for your mental well-being, but also bring people together. Which, if you want to do that I'll talk for the UK, anything costs you an arm and a leg. You leave the door and you've spent 20 quid within 5 minutes. and then everyone's just like a little battery chicken in their cages. The term called zoochosis. You wonder why there's all these mental health problems in the UK. It's because we're cooped up like chickens. And there's the integration with nature isn't as I think because it's a small, I'm talking about the UK, it's a small island. Other places in Europe are small, and I feel like they just get overcrowded, and every little space is turned into commerce that is overpriced. There's few places, let's sort this lighting out a bit. There's few places where I've stumbled across and been like, hey, this is like, have I died and gone to heaven or some shit? One is a certain beach on an island that my descendants come from on one side of the family. This one beach that is quite desolate and private, and it's stunning. Another, say 2 times when I went to Australia, Darling Harbour took my breath away, and Whitsundays took my breath away. I'm like, these are out of this world places. You don't even comprehend that places exist like that. Like, people say, oh, I'm gonna die, go to heaven, whatever. This is heaven. Darling Harbour is heaven. Whitsundays is heaven. Yeah, and then stumbling across here, I'm like, yes, it's man-made, but the thing with eco-socialism, and even just the Eastern way of life, everything's about moderation. And that stems from Taoism or Confucianism or yin and yang. Yes, it's artificial, but it's not artificial where it's like Dubai, where it's built on slave labour and the islands are cut to look like certain palm trees and all that bullshit. This is a saltwater lake with sand from, I imagine, the coast of Vietnam. And then just, look at the street lights, for example. I don't know where the influence of that comes from. Maybe that's European influence, but it just works well and it's just polished. And then obviously you've got cafes here, big coffee culture, which again brings people together. Got myself a soursop drink, 55 Vietnamese dong, which is less than £2. What have we got in the UK? Starbucks, and you pay £6. Let's talk about the history. So it's recognised as a communist state. Now, I don't believe I've ever been to a communist country. I'm not like a history buffing. I know a lot, but I'm not one of these where that's my central focus, which I found a lot at school. For a lot of people it was. But you got to remember, history is always wrote by the victors. So I always found it interesting to know what happened, but I like to know why. I like to know more about the philosophy, and I also like to understand what events that happened in relation to other events in other parts of the world and other cultures and philosophies. And history at school in the curriculum is it's filtered through a very thin funnel, let's say. But yeah, so I know it's a communist country. Other communist countries, for example, Cuba, China, Russia, North Korea, I believe. Or that's a dictatorship. Anyway, I passed through Shanghai airport. But yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know it was a communist country until I got here. As I think I said to someone recently, I didn't know much about Vietnam at all. Other than what I'd seen in the media, things like Tropic Thunder or Forrest Gump. All I knew was they had a war with America, which was quite notable. Did not know it went on for 20 years. Did not know they were under French colonial rule. And they had the French would not settle. They had a back and forth with them, a little tuffle. And then obviously China wanted to integrate them into Chinese culture, even though they seemed to me very different from the majority, my perception of Chinese people culturally. So yeah, interesting history. Now, Ho Chi Minh, who was the people's person, let's say, really liked figure, really revered. Essentially beat the South, which wanted to be capitalist. Even my barber here told me that they were happy with US influence, let's say. But overall, the communist ideology won out, and so they became a communist nation. The war ended in the 70s, 80s, I believe. They've opened the door to tourists in the last 30, 40 years. It's only really got popular as a destination in the last 5, 10 years. Thailand's obviously taken all the limelight in Southeast Asia, and Thailand's promoted it as such. But to me, I've just come from Thailand, and I was in the north, and it felt there's such a huge Western influence, much more than here. A lot more multicultural, but also a little bit, I feel with that it's degraded a little bit. Obviously I was only in the north, and I feel actually the south is more prominent of this, where it seems a little bit seedy, a little bit like one of these sex tourism hotspots where you've got fairly well-to-do Westerners just going over for the fetishization of Southeast Asian women, which is, I mean, it happens all over the world. It happens in the Canaries, it happens in Rio, it happens in Gambia. It's going to happen, isn't it? But with that, you get the more hedonistic culture, and it loses its sort of spiritual nature. Hence why I went to the north. I chose Chiang Mai purposefully because it has that more spiritual feel, which it has maintained. It's a great place. It's got, as I say, it's got a bit of balance, you know. I'm not saying be a fucking nun, but you need to moderate these things. But people say Vietnam's the new Thailand. Fucking bitty's stuck in the straw. People say it's the next Thailand. To me, it's a lot more developed from what I've seen. But then I've not been to places like Bangkok, which I've seen Condé Nast, which is a big travel newsletter, rated it the second best city in the world in 2025, I believe, this year or last year. So I definitely would check out Bangkok at some point. But yeah, let's steer back onto my hook a little bit. It's that balance. Vietnam's got a lot to offer. Think of it like a smaller America, right? Where you've got the desert. Obviously not to these extremes, but you've got so many different influences. The old quarter in Hanoi is completely different to Tahoe Lake, which looks completely different to this area where I am, Ocean Park, which looks completely different to Da Nang, which looks completely different to Ha Giang, which looks completely different to Dalat, which is completely different to Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon, which is great because you can have a lot of domestic tourism, but there is still wealth inequality. When I was at the barbers recently, they told me if I go up to Ha Giang, make sure to donate, because there's a lot of village kids that don't have parents. They have teachers that look after them, which surprised me because being a communist state, maybe that's the repercussions of communism, and that's what happened, or what can happen if communism persists, I guess. But now, as I say, they've evolved into socialism, so I've been told. In terms of enterprise, obviously they have all these businesses, they have a free market, I believe. People are competitive and pragmatic here. But then in terms of governance, I believe they have a more central operated system. So it seems to work. We look in the UK, look in Holland or Netherlands, look in America. We have this political spectrum which just solely divides people, sells your power externally. What's democratic in America is conservative, more conservative in the UK. What's liberal in Canada is much more liberal than the UK, for example. What's conservative in Holland is much more far right, or much more conservative than what we have in the UK. So everything's relative, and even the spectrums within that country, as I said previously, it's puppets, it's a facade. They want you to take the UK again, for example. Culture clash wars between they're letting in these people from what people call the third world, whether it's Iraq, Ethiopia, Somalia, and yet the working class Brits think they're the problem. Supposedly, I actually think it's more just a cry for belonging and community than anything, because these people, generally there's no integration. And it's the same for these people coming into the country. If you're coming here because it's a welfare state, which the Western Europe, being more open-minded, does provide, you don't appreciate what you haven't earned. And that applies for anyone, whether you come from the third world, whether you come from developed nation, whether you're a nepotism baby. You don't appreciate what you haven't earned, generally speaking. So they're pitted against each other. People who actually, we have more in common, because we are the 99%, whether you're from the third world, whether you're working class Brit, whether you're working class German. We have more in common with each other. We're seeing a rivalry because it gives us a team. Okay, if you're in a rivalry, if you have an opponent, you have a team, you have belonging, let's say. Even if you don't know what you're actually opposing, because the people coming into the country are not. They're taking advantage of a situation, right? It's the people who are letting them in the country that you should be contesting. But as I say, you have more in common with the people coming into the country than you do with the billionaires funding the operation. The main thing, irrespective of where you're from, is assimilation and integration, which requires third spaces. The UK has lost its third spaces. People don't go to the pub as much. People don't really go to church anymore. There's a pop-up of mosques, but you're not going to see native people in there, generally speaking. So there's no communal third space. As I say, I'm in Southeast Asia. Everything's dirt cheap. You've got decent weather, which is one factor. The prices are livable. So you don't need these thirds. You don't need pubs or whatever. First of all, you've got coffee shops everywhere, which is brilliant. You've got a plethora of different drinks. I'm drinking a flipping soursop, whatever it is. Brings people together. You've got these third spaces that are just outdoors in nature. Now, it's a very homogeneous society, but as I said, they're very welcoming to outsiders. But I feel like if I was Vietnamese, which obviously I'm not, you would have to moderate how many people you're bringing in. People seem respectful that are here. I don't know if that's because of the filter of people who can actually be here. But yeah, amazing. Look at this place. How many people have you seen walk past in the background? And yet, if I was in Leicester in the UK, it's swarmed and it's, it doesn't have shit like this. If I was in, I don't know, Dubai, again, swarmed with people. To me, it's nowhere near as nice as this. There's no green in Dubai. It's scientifically proven. It doesn't even need to be scientifically proven. When I used to work in corporate and they just brought some plants into the office, I felt more positive simply from just having a bit of greenery in the office. That's what you need. And how people live in these deserts. Great to visit. I'd love to visit Phoenix, Arizona. I'd love to visit certain places, Lebanon, Vegas, that are very much desert, but I wouldn't sustain my life there, because my well-being would not be the best. Now, I don't know if that's because I'm from a village in Yorkshire or I've got a small island Caribbean roots, but we are very much a part of nature. This reminds me, I'm going to do another video on islands and how I feel islands always flourish. I feel like a degree of isolation is necessary for the thriving rather than surviving of a demographic. Which, again, similar to Vietnam, of course it's not an island, but as I say, they only opened the doors 30, 40 years ago. The whole premise, when I say island, I mean a degree of control of your moderation. This is moderation. Isolation brings moderation, and it allows your community to preserve its values and assimilate people into those values and keep the people binded together that are natives of that place. That sounds like some far right fucking extremist. I don't know. This is just human nature, I guess. The key to life, the key to wisdom, is moderation. That opens the door to moderation, as well as courage, because it takes courage to admit that you don't know something. It's humility. Humility takes courage, and it's only through humility that you gain wisdom. And through wisdom, you get the sovereignty that I mentioned, which keeps you open-minded, keeps you curious, makes you appreciative of other perspectives because you're curious in the first place, and that's what holds a place together. Also, you learn more in nature. I have thoughts come to me at the times where maybe I'm taking a walk. Great ideas come to me. When I'm in bed with no phone, no laptop, no TV, just lying there, the moments before you go to bed, where you've got peace. Again, it's representative of nature. Great thoughts come to me. In the shower, when you've got water on you coming down onto your body, even when you have a cold shower, more so, you feel your energy levels go up. When you're on a hike, when you're anywhere in nature, just at peace. That's where the greatest ideas come from. And I believe there's a quote that even says something similar. But again, feel it for yourself. That's where you feel most at peace and where the greatest ideas come from. So, solar punk, which kind of goes hand in hand with eco-socialism, I say. One is the stabilizers, and one is more of a lifestyle / perspective / movement. Solar punk, as I say, it's about using electric rail, for example, hydrogen powered transport that are either renewable or low pollution, whether that's even things like noise pollution, which is the one thing I'll say about Vietnam, is the traffic is pretty bad, and the air pollution. I've been in Hanoi over Tay Ho Lake for 2 weeks, and I've not seen the sun. This is the first bit of sun I've seen. Maybe that's why I'm like, shit, okay, I'm in heaven now. This is the first bit of sun I've actually seen in 2 weeks. So yeah, there's a lot of pollution. This is why, again, I don't favour big cities. I don't fuck with big cities because of the noise pollution, the air pollution. You breathe easier in places like this. It's not swarmed with people. So yeah, these forms of transport that are more accessible and more sustainable. Obviously, cooking is a big part of our enjoyment in life and sustaining ourselves. So, harnessing energy from the sun in order to use a cooker. I believe it looks like a big metallic dome, and you put the food in the middle. Obviously, it takes longer, but one way we became collaborative as humans is through being communal, having rituals, even having a central piece, call it a totem, call it whatever you want, which is the solar cooker. Maybe the thing I can relate it to that most people know is a barbecue, for example. Everyone sits at a table together, discusses ideas, wait 2 hours for your food. Who cares? You sit around, talk. Lost that in the West. People sit with a fucking tray on the lap watching TV on their own, on the phone, taking a picture of their food. Like, oh, fuck. Yeah, communal eating. Nothing better that bridges people. Especially when I say, as Vietnam is such a great place, only pitfall is it's not multicultural compared to what I'm used to in the West whatsoever. I'm in Hanoi, bearing in mind, which is the capital city. I spent 4 years in London. It couldn't be more polar opposite. But life is an evolution. And as I say, it's all about moderation, controlling how much people are gonna adopt. Not necessarily adopt, but just respect your culture, respect your people. What was I gonna say now? I had a little fuck. Obviously, in a homogeneous nation, I say that actually, apparently Ho Chi Minh is a little more multicultural, obviously it had that capitalist influence, a little more Western capitalist oriented, and even Da Nang here is more like an expat hub. It's pattern recognition. You are representing something that they're not culturally familiar with whatsoever. So your impression leaves an impression for whoever's going to follow. Pattern recognition. There's nothing racist about pattern recognition. Obviously, be open-minded to everyone as an individual. But generally speaking, most people, 95% of people, don't fall very far from trees in our current times. So pattern recognition works. Why do we have pattern recognition? Originally for survival, for safety. Is it to be made redundant? Not really. As I say, people don't fall far from trees. Be open-minded, but realise that prejudice is a natural instinct. And the way you change that is through mitigating inequality. Because then you give people opportunity. People of any creed, culture, religion, whatever, thrive given the right opportunity. But when a majority of a culture is not given the resources, the opportunity, the doorways, the belief to be open-minded, to have a broader understanding, to understand intelligence is not one-dimensional. We base things on IQ. It's like basing athletic performance on solely a sprint, forgetting gymnastic ability, water fluency, let's say, whatever, swimming ability. I don't know, agility, endurance, strength, all these different things, right? It's the same approach to intelligence. So, of course, people know this. You've got emotional intelligence, you've got social intelligence, you've got street smart, you've got book smart, you've got IQ, which is largely about mechanics and maneuvering the environment. Even just stillness and peace is a form of intelligence in itself. That's where creativity stems from. Life is art. And art is where no mind meets mind. So you could say it's where nature, which is no mind, it's just innate intelligence. It's the intelligence that created our brains, which is obviously greater intelligence than what our brains are capable of. What our ego will tell us otherwise. But nature is the source of intelligence. And it's where that meets our human projected mind. So these developments, technology, infrastructure, transport, anything that's man-made, inorganic, where them two meet, that's art. If I'm waffling, let me know in the comments. But obviously this channel is all about being off the cuff. And so I try balance being on topic, but also being myself, I guess, because that's what's going to sustain, as I said in my previous videos. If I see it more so for me, just to get things off my chest, perfect. The Asian pinnacle, I would say, in that region aside, it's adopted the we can change this world nature of the West. We see these cranes in the background, you know, they strive here. It's maintained, you know, when religion dies, take Nietzsche, he said, God is dead, whatever. When religion dies, it doesn't change the moral outlook of the future generations. Obviously they're shaped slowly by outside influences, technology, immigration, education. Obviously they change slightly, but they're very crap. Alright, we're still recording, but my screen bright percent. Right. Shit. I actually can't see a thing. I don't want to end the video. Right, whatever, I'll trust it's still recording. It is still recording, right. Where was I? Yeah, the very foundations of the region's nootropic. When I say nootropic, I mean like the collective minds. The foundation remains, okay, and it's like, maybe call it your subconscious. That comes from the morals, which come from the religions that we've, again, had in place for quite a significant amount of time. So yeah, they've got a great foundation. I love Eastern philosophy because it's generally more about power coming from within. Doesn't mean I disregard Western philosophy again, because I feel like it brings a lot of innovation, which is great, so long as it's moderated, which moderation is a large part of the West, but then obviously it's not as multicultural, of the East, but obviously it's not as multicultural as the West, so it doesn't get the same balance of different perspectives. But there's no point having that multicultural nation if there's no integration. So yeah, it's got a good bedrock, it's got a good ability to strive, it's got the geographical nature of the place is amazing. I want to go to Hajjang. I don't think I'm going to have time or finances, but I've seen what it looks like. It looks incredible. I've seen Da Nang online, it looks incredible. Very diverse geographically. Is this recording?